They say you can live with someone for 10 years and still wake up one morning feeling like you're lying next to a stranger. I used to think that was just something bitter people said to make themselves feel better. Then again, there's a lot of things I used to think. I'm Juan Carter, 41 years old, born and raised outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in a town small enough that if you sneezed at the gas station, 3 people would text you, "Bless you." I work for an HVAC company, nothing fancy, but honest work. I fix what's broken, which I always figured was a pretty good metaphor for the kind of husband I wanted to be. Jean Carter, formerly Jean Whitman, didn't grow up around here. She was one of those moved to the Midwest for a fresh start types. Met her at a 4th of July block party, both of us reaching for the last bratwurst like it was a scene out of some corny commercial. She laughed first. I laughed second. By the end of the night, she was eating the brat, and I was telling my buddy Tommy, "I'm gonna marry that girl." 3 years later, I did. And for a while, it was good. Real good. We had the 2-story with the white porch swing, the Ford in the driveway, and a Labrador that shed enough hair to carpet a second house. Jean taught elementary school, 3rd graders, and I remember thinking there was something pretty great about being married to someone who still thought coloring inside the lines was a life skill. We weren't perfect, but hell, who is? Marriage is a little like keeping an old pickup running. A little tune-up here, a little duct tape there, pray a lot. I figured the squeaks and rattles were just part of the deal. But if I'm honest, and I'll be honest with you, because there's no point lying to strangers, I started noticing something around year 7. At first, it was little things. Jean stopped laughing at my jokes, and trust me, some of them were good. She started staying late at meetings, because apparently coloring inside the lines now took until 9 at night. When she did get home, she was tired. Always tired. Too tired to talk. Too tired to cuddle. Too tired to even be mad when I forgot the trash again, and Jean not being mad about the trash? That was like the earth spinning backward. But the real kicker was the silences. They weren't comfortable silences anymore. They were heavy, like the air just before a thunderstorm. Like we were both sitting there waiting for something to snap. Still, I wasn't about to jump to conclusions. I'm a simple guy. I believe in loyalty, hard work, and minding your own business unless there's a real reason not to. So I told myself it was stress. I told myself maybe we were just hitting that midlife thing people talk about. I told myself a lot of things. One night, about 6 months ago, I got home from a brutal day fixing busted air conditioners in 100-degree heat. Jean was already home, sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of white wine and that look she gets when she's pretending to listen to a podcast but is actually 1,000 miles away. I kissed the top of her head like I always do. She flinched. Not a big flinch. Just enough. I stood there for a second, trying to figure out if I'd imagined it. Maybe she was startled. Maybe she had a headache. Maybe, or maybe, whispered a voice in the back of my head, it's something worse. I shook it off, grabbed a beer, sat down across from her, asked her how her day was. She smiled, that tight little polite smile people use when they're talking to their boss or the guy at the DMV, and said, "Busy. Kids are crazy this time of year." I nodded, took a sip, waited. That was it. That was all she had. No funny stories about what little Timmy said in class. No complaints about the principal being a jerk. No, "How was your day, babe?" Just silence. I tried to tell myself that every couple goes through dry spells. That real marriage isn't fireworks every day. That people don't talk about the bad parts enough. But the thing is, you can smell smoke even if you can't see the fire. And there was definitely smoke. Still, I didn't snoop. Didn't dig through her phone. Didn't follow her after work like some psycho. Didn't interrogate her like Perry Mason. I just lived with it. Week after week, month after month, while the gap between us grew so wide you could have driven a semi through it. It got to the point where even our dog, Boomer, started sleeping on my side of the bed like he was picking sides. I kept thinking it would get better. That maybe it was just a rough patch. But rough patches don't feel like slow deaths. One Friday night, Jean said she was going to a staff dinner. Mandatory. New district superintendent wanted to meet everybody. No spouses, she said, tossing it off like an afterthought while she adjusted her earrings in the mirror. I nodded like a good little soldier. Told her to have fun. Watch her walk out the door in that black dress I hadn't seen in months. Boomer whined at the door after she left. I scratched behind his ears and said, "Don't worry, boy. She's just tired. Just stressed. It'll be fine." Boomer looked at me like he didn't believe it either. The house was too quiet. I tried watching TV, But everything on Netflix seemed like a bad joke. Happy couples, romantic comedies, idiots falling in love over spilled coffee. So I grabbed my keys and decided to head over to Benny's bar, shoot some pool, kill a few brain cells. Halfway there, my phone buzzed. "Tommy, you coming to the dinner thing?" he said as soon as I picked up. "What dinner thing?" I asked, already feeling a knot forming in my stomach. "The superintendent dinner. They said HVAC partners were invited too. Since we do the maintenance for the district now. It's down at the Riverside Inn. Starts in like 20 minutes. You didn't get the email?" No, I did not get the email." "Oh," I said, real casual. Maybe Jean forgot to mention it. Probably. "Anyway, come by, man. It's free food. And you owe me a beer." I hung up, sat there gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Mandatory dinner. Spouses invited. Jean said no spouses. Boomer had been right. Boomer had known. I should have turned around. I should have driven home, grabbed a six-pack, and spent the night pretending everything was fine. But there's a funny thing about knowing you're being lied to. Once you get that taste in your mouth, you can't spit it out. So I turned the truck toward the Riverside Inn. And somewhere deep in my gut, I knew my life was about to split wide open. If you've never walked into a room already knowing you don't belong, let me tell you, it's a special kind of hell. The Riverside Inn was packed, every cheap banquet chair filled with teachers, admin staff, janitors, and a handful of vendors like me, people who kept the lights on and the toilets flushing. I kept my head low as I slipped past the hostess, acting like I was late but invited. Nobody questioned me. People rarely do when you look like you know where you're going. The ballroom smelled like overcooked pasta and bad decisions. I scanned the tables, trying not to look obvious. It didn't take long. There she was, Jean, sitting at a table near the front, wine glass in hand, laughing way too hard at something the guy next to her said. She was leaning in close, her hand brushing his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't recognize the guy. Early 40s, smug haircut, a button-down shirt a little too tight for the gut he was pretending he didn't have. The kind of guy who calls himself a good listener while talking about himself for an hour straight. I stood there for a second, just watching my wife look happier in a room full of strangers than she had looked at home in months. Watching her touch another man like it was a reflex, not even something she had to think about. A waiter bumped into me, muttered an apology. I realized I was just standing there like a statue, so I moved toward the bar. Needed a drink. Needed something to keep me from doing something stupid. I slid onto a stool and ordered a beer, pretending to be absorbed in the baseball game playing silently on the TV above the bar. But my ears were tuned to her table like a radio locked onto one frequency. And that's when it happened. That's when the universe, for once in its miserable life, decided to do me a solid. Because smug haircut, Mr. Arm Toucher, decided to get up and give a little speech. Apparently, he was important. Some special projects coordinator for the district, whatever that meant. Maybe he coordinated Jean's lipstick onto his collar. He grabbed the mic, gave a big smile, and launched into the usual boring corporate rah-rah speech. Thanked the teachers. Thanked the maintenance staff. Thanked everyone for making this district a shining example of community and innovation. I tuned it out at first. Just another guy who loved the sound of his own voice. But then, right when I was about to down the rest of my beer and get the hell out of there, he said it. He smiled right at Jean, didn't even try to hide it, and said, "And a personal thanks to Jean Carter, who's been helping me with after-hours grant writing sessions. Couldn't have gotten half the funding without her." The room laughed politely. Jean's face turned a shade redder, and she gave one of those embarrassed little shrugs people do when they're pretending they're not thrilled with the attention. After-hours grant writing sessions. Sure. And I'm a backup dancer for Beyoncé. Nobody, and I mean nobody, spends hours after work grant writing with their boss unless they're either trying to get promoted or horizontal. And Jean already had tenure. She didn't need a promotion. I sat there staring into my beer like it had all the answers. Because somehow hearing it out loud, hearing her name publicly linked to his, like some little in-joke the whole room was supposed to pretend was innocent, hit harder than anything I could have found on a phone or in a text message. This wasn't an affair hiding in the shadows. This was an affair so casual, so baked into their everyday life, that they could joke about it in front of 100 people. And nobody blinked. Nobody except me. I paid for my beer in cash, left a tip bigger than necessary, and walked out without looking back. The night air hit me like a slap. I got in my truck, gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles popped, and stared at the dashboard. What was I supposed to do? March back in there and make a scene? Flip the table like some angry redneck on a reality show? No. Jean wasn't worth the price of a public meltdown. If she wanted to parade around playing arm candy for some low-rent administrator with a midlife crisis haircut, that was her business. But she wasn't going to keep playing me for a fool. Not anymore. I drove home with the windows down, the cool air trying and failing to wash the anger out of me. Boomer was waiting at the door, tail wagging like always. At least someone was still loyal. I let him out back, sat on the porch swing, and thought. I replayed the last 6 months like a bad movie. The late nights. The tired excuses. The sudden, weird interest in fancy perfume I didn't buy her. The random new hobbies. Grant writing must have been code for something, huh? All of it suddenly made sense. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sad. I wasn't confused. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was just done. Completely, absolutely done. Done playing house with someone who'd already moved out emotionally. Done making excuses for someone who wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I leaned back on the swing, looking up at the stars. You know, they look the same on the worst nights as they do on the best. There's some comfort in that, I guess. Tonight, I was going to start planning. Jean thought she was clever, thought she was playing a long game. Well, guess what? Two can play. And I'm a lot better at innings than she is. Boomer came trotting back up to the porch, plopped down at my feet with a big sigh like he was tired of the drama too. I scratched his ears and smiled. Don't worry, boy, I said. We're gonna handle this the right way. Not loud, not messy, but unforgettable. The thing about being betrayed isn't the anger. It's the embarrassment. You feel like the whole world saw the joke before you did, and now you're standing there with the punchline stuck to your forehead. By the time Jean pulled into the driveway around 10 that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table, Boomer curled at my feet like he was standing guard. The door opened. Jean came in, her heels clicking across the hardwood, her perfume, that expensive crap she bought, on sale, hitting me like a punch. She didn't notice me right away. Too busy texting, smiling down at her phone like it was telling her secrets worth smiling about. She looked up, startled. Oh, she said, like she wasn't expecting to find her own husband awake in his own damn house. You're still up? I gave her a long, slow smile. Not the kind you give someone you love. The kind you give when you're about to take the first move in a game they didn't even know they were playing. Yeah, I said. Figured I'd wait up. Big night? She hesitated. It was quick, blink and you miss it. But it was there. Oh, dinner. Boring speeches. Same old. I nodded like I believed her. Like I didn't know about the after-hours grant writing and the arm touches and the secret inside jokes. Meet anybody interesting? I asked, real casual, like a guy making small talk with a neighbor. She shook her head too fast. Not really. Just the usual crowd. Work people. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. She was good, I'll give her that. The kind of good you only get after practicing the lie 100 times in the mirror. Well, I said, tapping my fingers lightly on the table. Tommy told me they invited vendors too. Said it was a district-wide thing. Jean froze for a second. Not big. Not dramatic. Just a tiny stiffening of her shoulders, like a cat spotting a snake in the grass. Oh, she said, managing a little laugh. I didn't know. Must have been a last-minute change. Must have been, I agreed. The silence stretched between us, long and tight. Jean shifted, setting her purse down carefully on the counter like it might explode if she moved wrong. Listen, she said, plastering on a bright smile. I'm beat. Big day tomorrow. Mind if we catch up later? Perfect. She wanted out. She wanted escape. I stood up slowly, letting the chair scrape back across the floor. Sure, I said, voice easy, almost cheerful. But before you go, one quick thing. She hesitated, one hand still on the purse strap. Yeah, I kept my tone light. Like this was just another random thought. Like it didn't matter at all. I was just wondering, I said, scratching my chin like it was no big deal. How late these grant writing sessions go. Just curious. There it was. The shot. Her face flickered. Not fear. Not guilt. Annoyance. The same look you give a toddler who keeps asking why the sky is blue. Oh my God, Juan, she said, laughing, actually laughing, like I was being ridiculous. You're jealous because of a stupid work thing? I smiled wider. Nah, I said. Just interesting is all. How much time you've been putting into it? After hours. One-on-one. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might sprain something. If you're gonna be that insecure, she said, grabbing her purse, Then maybe you should trust me for once instead of grilling me like I'm on trial. And that was it. The tell. The panic bluff. Only guilty people accuse you of not trusting them when you haven't even made an accusation yet. I stepped closer, dropping my voice. Didn't say anything about not trusting you, Jean. She froze. I leaned in just a little. Funny you went there all on your own. For a second, the mask cracked. I saw the fear, the flash of calculation. But Jean had always been quick on her feet. She shook her head, all righteous indignation, all wounded pride. I'm exhausted, she snapped. I'm not doing this with you right now. Sure, I said easily, stepping back, giving her space. Wouldn't want to interrupt all that hard work you've been putting in. With, what was his name again? She stiffened. Bingo. Got her. I waited. 1 second. 2. She tried to move past me. Tried to shoulder me aside like this was just another petty argument she could walk away from and forget. But I wasn't done. You know what's weird, Jean? I said conversationally. They were handing out awards tonight. Little thank you plaques. Tommy texted me a picture of one. I pulled my phone from my back pocket, waved it a little, not even bothering to show her yet. She stopped cold. They gave you one, I said. For your dedicated after-hours work with special projects. I finally flipped the phone toward her. The picture was blurry, but clear enough. Her name. The title. The word special underlined twice in thick black marker, probably by some bored janitor trying to be cute. Jean stared at the screen like it was a loaded gun pointed at her. I waited. Waited for the lie. Waited for the excuse. Waited for her to tell me I was crazy, paranoid, controlling. But for the first time in our whole damn marriage, Jean had nothing. No words. No excuses. No righteous anger. Just silence. Boomer let out a low whine, sensing the tension but not knowing where to put it. I pocketed the phone and stepped aside, giving her a clear path to the stairs. Go ahead, I said, voice flat. Big day tomorrow. Wouldn't want you to be tired. Jean looked at me like she wanted to say something, anything, but her mouth just opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Then she turned and walked upstairs without another word. I stood there for a long time after she was gone, listening to the creak of the floorboards, listening to the quiet, listening to the sound of the last pieces of my marriage settling into place like a broken picture frame hitting the ground. I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even surprised. I was just ready to finish what she started. And this time, Jean was going to see what it felt like to be blindsided. The right way. The smart way. The way that sticks. You can tell a lot about a person by how they react when they think the world is watching. Jean liked the world watching. Jean liked being the star of her own little movie, the perfect wife, the cheerful teacher, the woman who had it all together. She liked control. And that was going to be her downfall. I spent the rest of that night planning. Not pacing or brooding or punching walls like a bad sitcom husband, planning. Because if you're going to break someone who lives for appearances, you don't scream at them in a parking lot or throw their stuff on the lawn. You don't make it messy. You make it public. And you make it clean. By the time the sun was up, I had everything I needed. See, Jean had forgotten something in her little after-hours romance. She wasn't just cheating on a husband, she was cheating on a reputation. And in small towns like ours, reputations are the real currency. It just so happened that the school district was hosting a community appreciation picnic that Saturday. Big deal event. Food trucks, bouncy houses, awards for teachers who made a difference. The kind of thing where every kid dragged their parents, and every parent pretended not to hate it. Guess who was scheduled to be honored for her dedication to the district? That's right, Jean Carter. There would be speeches. There would be a photo op. There would be news cameras from the local station, Channel 7, proud sponsor of Awkward Small Town Smiles. The board had even asked family members to come up and say a few words when each honoree was called. Make it personal, the flyer said, all chirpy and clueless. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Friday night, Jean acted like nothing had happened. Business as usual. She went to bed early, told me I could sleep on the couch if I was going to be in a mood. Didn't even ask why I hadn't tried to argue. By Saturday morning, she was dressed like Martha Stewart's smug little sister, crisp white blouse, tasteful blue skirt, the pearls I bought her 5 anniversaries ago. She stood in the mirror adjusting herself, practicing her humble smile face. You coming? She asked, like nothing was wrong. I smiled back at her in the mirror. Wouldn't miss it for the world. We drove to the park in silence, Boomer in the backseat, tail thumping happily against the window. At least one of us was genuinely excited. The park was packed, balloons everywhere, Kids running wild, dads standing around holding half-eaten corn dogs like they were contemplating their life choices. Jean immediately slipped into teacher mode. Big smiles, quick hugs, loud greetings. She shook hands with board members, air-kissed the principal's wife, posed for selfies with students' moms. I stayed by the water station, sunglasses on, arms crossed, just another guy tagging along behind his successful wife. Finally, it was time. They called the honorees up one by one. Cheesy music played through scratchy speakers. Parents clapped. Kids yawned. And then, our next honoree, Jean Carter. A pillar of compassion, leadership, and integrity. Oh man, I almost laughed out loud at integrity. Jean beamed, hurrying up to the makeshift stage. The board president, a guy who looked like he practiced smiling in the mirror until his cheeks hurt, handed her a little plaque. And then, the moment I'd been waiting for. We'd like to invite a family member to come up and say a few words. Jean glanced around, expecting maybe a kid from her class or a fellow teacher. Instead, she saw me, already walking toward the mic. The whole park was looking now. Hundreds of people. Teachers. Students. Parents. Channel 7's cameraman trained his lens right at me. Jean's smile wobbled, just for a second. I took the mic, took a breath, and smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, voice calm, clear, friendly even. I'm Juan Carter, Jean's husband. Polite claps from the audience. I just wanted to take a minute to tell you all how proud I am, I said, smiling right at Jean. Proud of all the hours she's put in. All the late nights. All the extra, after-hours projects. A ripple went through the crowd. Jean's face tightened, but she held the smile like a vice. I kept going. She's worked so hard, not just for the district, I said, my voice dropping just slightly, just enough that the ones paying attention leaned in. But also for her very special extracurricular activities. Another ripple. Channel 7's cameraman stepped in a little closer. Jean's hands clenched around her plaque. I smiled wider. Not everybody would have the energy to balance a career and a thriving personal life the way Jean has, I said. Especially with all those late nights with her special projects coordinator. Real commitment. A few murmurs now. A few eyebrows raised. Jean's smile was dying, piece by piece. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but what could she say? I looked at her one last time. And I just want to say, I said, voice soft but carrying. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, Jean, for showing all of us what real dedication looks like. I handed the mic back to the stunned board president, who looked like he wanted to crawl into the nearest food truck and die. I turned and walked off the stage, past Jean, who just stood there frozen, plaque still clutched in her white-knuckled hands. Boomer barked once from somewhere in the crowd like he knew the show was over. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. By the time I reached the truck, my phone was already vibrating nonstop, texts from friends, from coworkers, from Tommy, dude what the hell, from numbers I didn't even recognize. I climbed into the cab, started the engine, and pulled away. The last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was Jean, standing alone on that little wooden stage, the whole world finally seeing her exactly the way I did. Not a star. Not a victim. Just a liar who finally got caught in her own spotlight. And the best part? I didn't even have to raise my voice. If you ever want to know how desperate someone is, watch how fast they call you when you take away their favorite mirror. The second I pulled out of the park, Jean's number lit up my phone. I let it ring. It rang again. And again. And again. Voicemails started stacking up, first the fake sweet ones, then the pleading ones, then the angry ones. The full life cycle of a narcissist. I didn't listen to a single one. I just drove. Windows down, Boomer's head sticking out the back like a flag of victory. I figured she'd show up eventually. Jean wasn't the type to lose control without trying to claw it back. She showed up the next morning. Didn't even knock. She still had her key, and apparently thought that meant she had rights. I was sitting at the kitchen table again, same spot as Thursday night, drinking coffee and going over my new lease on a little apartment closer to work, just big enough for me and Boomer. No white picket fence. No porch swing. Just peace. The front door opened and slammed. Jean's heels hammered across the floor. Juan, she snapped, voice already cracking. We need to talk. I didn't look up. Just sipped my coffee and waited. She marched into the kitchen, hair pulled back tight, face puffy from either crying or not sleeping. Probably both. Juan, what the hell was that yesterday? She demanded, dropping her purse on the counter like she lived here. I took another sip. Let the silence stretch long enough that she got uncomfortable. When I finally looked up, I said, "You want coffee? Pot's fresh?" Her mouth opened and closed. Not the reaction she expected. She shook her head like she was clearing it. "I'm serious," she said, planting both hands on the table like she could physically hold the conversation together. "You humiliated me. In front of the entire district." I smiled faintly. "That wasn't me, Jean. That was you." She recoiled like I slapped her. "You don't understand," she said quickly, voice sliding into that desperate, breathy tone she always used when she wanted something. "It's not what you think." I leaned back in my chair, arms folded. "Go ahead," I said. "Explain it." She blinked. She faltered, then rushed ahead. "I was feeling lonely, Juan. You've been distant for months. You never noticed anything. You didn't even ask how I was doing." I let that hang there a second. "You were feeling lonely," I repeated slowly, like I was trying out the words. "Yes," she said, grabbing onto it like a life preserver. "And it just happened. I didn't mean for it to." I nodded thoughtfully. "Sure," I said. "Loneliness. That explains the late-night texts, the secret meetings, the lying. All classic symptoms." She flushed. "It was just a mistake," she said. "One mistake." I chuckled. Actually chuckled. "One mistake," I repeated. "For how long, Jean? 6 months? 9? She flinched but didn't answer. That was answer enough. I pushed my coffee cup away, stood up slow and easy. "You know what gets me," I said, voice calm. "It's not that you cheated. It's that you thought you were clever." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off with a glance. "You thought you were playing chess and I was playing checkers," I said. "You thought you could keep coming home, throwing scraps of attention my way, and I'd just roll over like Boomer." Boomer, as if on cue, thumped his tail once against the floor. Jean swallowed. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said weakly. I smiled, but there wasn't a shred of warmth in it. "You didn't care if you hurt me," I said. "Big difference." She started crying then, real ugly crying, not the dainty soap opera tears she practiced in front of a mirror. Snot, smeared mascara, the whole deal. If it had happened 6 months ago, maybe it would have wrecked me. Now, it was just noise. "I can fix this," she blubbered, grabbing my arm like she could physically stop what was already done. "I'll do anything. We can go to counseling. We can work on it." I looked down at her hand on my sleeve. Slowly, carefully, I peeled it off and set it aside like trash you don't want to touch twice. "No," I said. Her eyes widened. "Juan, please." "No," I said again, voice like steel. "You don't get to burn the house down and then cry because you're cold." She sobbed harder, trying to reach for me again. I stepped back. "You made your choice," I said. "You just didn't think you'd have to live with it." "But I love you," she gasped. I laughed. "Short, bitter." "No, Jean," I said. "You love what I gave you. Stability. Respect. A house where you could play pretend." She was shaking now, hands pressed to her face like she could hide inside them. I grabbed the manila envelope sitting on the counter, the one with the divorce papers inside. Filled out. Signed. Ready. I tossed it onto the table. It landed with a slap that made her jump. "I already filed," I said. "All you have to do is sign." She stared at it like it was a bomb about to go off. "We can fix this," she whispered. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "I can fix a busted furnace, Jean. I can't fix somebody who thinks respect is optional." Boomer barked once, sharp and sudden, as if he was seconding the motion. I grabbed my keys off the hook by the door. Walked past her without a second glance. Paused with my hand on the knob. "You've got till noon to get your stuff out," I said. "After that, I'm changing the locks." She made a broken little sound behind me, part sob, part gasp. I opened the door, stepped out into the bright morning sun. Boomer trotted after me, tail wagging, already forgetting the storm inside. I didn't look back. Not once. Funny thing about moving out of the house you build a life in, turns out, it's easier than you think when there's nothing left holding you there. I stayed until noon like I said. Sat on the porch with Boomer, watched Jean scramble back and forth like a squirrel before winter, shoving clothes into garbage bags, grabbing photo frames off the walls, hauling her life out one cheap tote at a time. She didn't say a word to me. Smart for once. Every now and then, I caught her glancing at me, hoping for, what? Forgiveness? Mercy? A last-minute save? Not a day, sweetheart. By 12:30, she was gone. By 1, the locksmith was screwing a shiny new deadbolt into place. Boomer stretched out on the porch next to me, snoring like nothing important had happened. I scratched behind his ears and looked out at the street. The same neighborhood. Same peeling mailboxes. Same kids riding bikes down the cracked sidewalk. Everything looked the same. And somehow, everything felt different. I wasn't broken. I wasn't wrecked. Hell, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was done. And done, it turns out, feels a hell of a lot like freedom. The next few weeks moved fast. Signed the papers. Sold the house. Split the proceeds right down the middle, because even in the end, I figured fair was fair. Jean didn't fight me. Didn't even try. Probably because the whole town knew by then. News travels faster in small towns than bad plumbing. It wasn't just the people at the picnic. It was the teachers, the parents, the school board. I didn't have to lift a finger. Jean's own reputation did the heavy lifting for me. Last I heard, she put in for a transfer to a district 2 counties over. Somewhere nobody would know her as the after-hours specialist. Good luck with that, Jean. Me? I moved into a one-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop. Not glamorous, but it's got hot water, a decent view of the city park, and no one lying next to me at night. I started going to Benny's bar again on Friday nights. Tommy bought me the first round the first night back, slapped me on the back so hard I almost spilled it. Whole damn town's talking about you, man, he said, grinning. I shrugged. Let them talk. And they did. For once, the whispers weren't about what I didn't see coming. They were about how I handled it. Cold. Clean. Final. Some people said I was a hero. Some said I was a heartless bastard. I didn't care. They weren't the ones who had to wake up every day next to someone who made promises with one hand and texted someone else with the other. A couple months later, I ran into someone who knew her. New teacher at the school. Young guy. Polite. Eyes too wide for this town. He didn't know I was her ex when he started talking. Just said, hey, you know a Jean Carter? Heard some stuff about her when I got hired. I just smiled and said, yeah, she's unforgettable. He laughed, not knowing the half of it. I didn't correct him. No point. Jean could be whoever she wanted now. Wasn't my circus, wasn't my monkeys anymore. And me? I was doing just fine. Some weekends, I'd take Boomer out to the lake. Sit in a lawn chair with a cold beer, watch the water, watch the sky. Sometimes people ask if I'm dating again. I tell them maybe someday. But right now, it's just me and Boomer in a life without second-guessing if the smile across the table means anything. It's a funny thing, rebuilding your life. You think it's going to be this huge, dramatic Rocky montage kind of ordeal. But it's not. It's small things. Buying the cereal you actually like without someone complaining it's too sugary. Sleeping in the middle of the bed. Leaving dishes in the sink overnight because there's nobody there to pretend you're a failure over it. Little freedoms. Little victories. I even bought a new truck last month. Nothing fancy. Just something that doesn't have memories leaking out of the passenger seat. The first time I took it out for a real drive, I rolled the windows down, turned the music up, and headed out of town without even thinking about where I was going. No deadline. No texts asking where I was. No passive-aggressive sighs waiting when I got home. Just the road. And me. And maybe that's the thing nobody tells you about endings. They're not just sad. They're clean. They give you the kind of freedom you forget you're allowed to have. The kind where you realize you don't owe anybody your forgiveness. You don't owe them your pity. Hell, you don't even owe them a second thought. Jean taught me that. Not on purpose, of course. But sometimes the best lessons come from the worst teachers. So wherever she is now, standing in some new district staff lounge, practicing her fake smile, reapplying her lipstick in a smudged bathroom mirror, I wish her all the best. Really. Because it's easy to fake a smile in front of strangers. It's a lot harder to fake a soul when you're alone with yourself at night. Me? I'm good. Better than good. And this time, when someone asks if I'm happy, I won't even have to lie. Subscribe to the channel